Ready? I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Livingston Parish Ordinance Committee meeting. Apologize for running a little late today. Miss Sandy, would you call the roll?
Shane Mack. Mr. Harris.
Here.
Mr. Wascom.
Here.
Mr. Talbert.
Here. Speed bumps and criteria for allowance. Hopefully we'll have that finished next meeting. Mr. Mack wasn't going to be here tonight, and he said that he's not quite through, so we're going to continue to put it on the agenda, but we're not going to discuss tonight. 3B, limits on fill material on residential lots. This is something we've been talking about for several meetings now. We've handed out an ordinance amendment or change to the ordinance. Basically, under section 1376, method of reducing flood losses, we list 5 that the parish has. Under control, filling, grading, dredging, and other development may increase flood damage. We're going to introduce these amendments to it. Basically, under 4A would be a proposed certificate of elevation shall be submitted for any structure to be built or placed on a lot prior to any permit being issued, which shall include but not limited to the following information: address, contractor, proposed elevation.
Where are you reading this at?
This is in the blue part.
Okay.
This is the blue part is the part that's being added. Proposed elevation. So that is the anticipated elevation that your floor is going to be at. Base flood is the base flood for the property. Then 5 would be the lowest natural ground for the property. So your engineer in the past would go out and shoot your base flood and tell you where, put a stake where you need to be above base flood. But to bring in fill, when you submit your plans, you're going to need to bring 3 shots: the anticipated floor shot, the base flood shot, and the lowest part of your property shot. And then an explanation on how the elevation of the proposed structure is going to be achieved, be it through fill, be it through a chain wall, or be it through piers, or any combination thereof. Part B, individual lots, tracts, parcels, etc. You turn over, we're going to say that if you have a lot smaller than a ½ acre, you're limited to 24 inches of fill. Lots a ½ acre or above or larger, you're limited to 36 inches of fill. Section 3 or part 3, fill shall be limited to the foundation structure. So if you have a garage that's separate, we're not limiting you to one fill thing. You can, for any structure, you can have more than multiple anthills out on your property. Should not extend more than 24 inches horizontally from under the structure, which means your flat part of your fill can extend 24 inches past the slab, at which point in time your slope will need to occur. And the slope will be no steeper than a 3-to-1 horizontal to vertical slope. Fill shall not be placed closer than 8 foot of any property line in order to facilitate the collection, transportation of any increased runoff via swales if required. Item 6, compaction tests will be required when the footer of the proposed structure does not extend at least 12 inches under undisturbed soil. We talked about putting natural ground. We went with undisturbed soil because some of these lots have actually had fill brought on them in the past, and they've been compacted and they've sat there over time. Sometimes they have had 3 or 4 foot of fill brought on them in the construction process. So to get to natural ground is not feasible. So that's why I went to undisturbed soil. If you bring in dirt, pile it up, you're going to have to do 1 compaction test per 12-inch lift per 1,000 square feet of fill. Morgan, John asked me a question earlier, and it's been so long since I had one done I couldn't answer. Basically, when the guy comes out to run a compaction test, I know the cost of running the first one, but the multiple ones after that tend to be less expensive. What are we talking about on a compaction test? What's it going to cost us to run? Say we got to go run 10. You got any? I know none of y'all got. Mr. Kenton, you got an idea? You run a compaction test lately on anything you've done?
Well, I don't run them on a
lift compaction test, I'll do the entire pad and have the company I use to come out and take a bore sample down into the natural earth. And then they give me readings, and that cost me about $600 per pad.
Okay, so Morgan.
I would question why, you know, if you would limit me to just to one method of doing it when there's multiple methods.
Well, and that's, I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you, we kind of borrowed this from somebody else's deal, and I'm glad you brought that up. I was getting ready to ask Morgan, is that could we do that? Is that adequate? How you know, we talked about doing, you know, a bunch of compaction tests. So if you had, like, if you're doing a 3,000 square foot house with 36 inches of lift, you're gonna run, you know, 9 compaction tests over the period. You know what I'm talking about? As you put the dirt in, you're gonna have to bring it, and you're gonna have to bring the guy out on 3 different occasions. Is Mr. Kinchen's fault, the way he's doing it, adequate? I mean, what's your engineering point of view, or?
Yeah, I mean, typically if it passes compaction, I mean, it would be, I mean, you could do more of like meeting a standard. Like, they're not gonna do something that doesn't meet the standards imposed that they have.
Okay, so we're gonna introduce it as is. You think you could help me out over the next couple of weeks before we have the final hearing on this? And maybe come up with some language that would be a little, go ahead, Mr. Kinchin.
I mean, if I would, but,
Come on up to the microphone so everybody can, so it'll be on the record, if you don't mind. You can go ahead and introduce yourself and your address, please.
my name's Tim Kinchin. My address is 12990 Sutcliffe Drive, Walker, Louisiana. Mr. Talbot, instead of trying to tell the engineering firm how they need to do a compaction test, which is their business, I would just put in the ordinance of what standard it needs to meet, like you have an I and double I, either a 90% modified Proctor or a 95% standard Proctor, and leave it at that. And then the engineering firm is going to go and do what test is necessary, and by set standards, and give you that information.
So basically, you think if we eliminate A and say that the fill should meet one of the following standards, either 90% modified Proctor or 95% standard Proctor, and the engineering company signs off on that, that would be adequate? Morgan, y'all feel that would work?
We would rely on the testing lab, yes, so the geotech engineer, yeah.
So basically, if we struck A and left it and turned B to A, and that's how we left the deal, you think that would be sufficient? And then if there was a different, you know, then they would have multiple options as to how they want to determine whether the thing is. And I understand Mr. Kinchen's deal, but basically he can bring the dirt in, whether he puts it in lifts or puts it in one deal, once he determines it's compacted. And what we're talking about, bringing in 12-inch lifts, having to run the test, then come back and start putting more dirt in, then run the test, which would just prolong its process. So y'all are satisfied that if we eliminate A and turn B to A, that we would be adequate in that?
Yeah, because they have an engineer that stands off on it.
Okay.
Is that what you was trying to say, Mr. Kinchin?
Exactly. I mean, leave it to the engineering firm.
So scratching-
They have standards that they're gonna have to meet, and whether they do it, they come out and do the individual lifts and do the nuclear test and individual lifts. Or if they do a bore sample on the entire pad.
So scratching A would
Yeah.
answer the question.
These two standards, the 90% modified Proctor and 95% standard Proctor, you're gonna get what you're looking for, and leave it to the engineering firm and the contractor as to who he wants to hire and how they're gonna get that and give you this.
So the end result would be approved.
Yeah,
We're not telling you how to do it, we're just telling you to meet these standards.
That's correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're just telling you, we want a geotech engineer to tell us that pad meets that standard.
Sure.
So that makes perfectly good sense. Thank you for your input. And then 7, if a structure is elevated over 24 or 36 inches respectively, then piers or chain walls or any combination can be utilized, but we're still limiting your dirt to 24 or 36 based on the thing. Then C, residential lots, and Morgan, what we talked about, you think it needs to say 24 or 36 respectively?
I'm a little confused on what it's for.
Okay, here's the deal. we're saying ultimately that if a lot's smaller than a quarter acre, we're gonna limit your fill to 24 inches. If it's greater than a half acre, if it's greater than a half acre, you can put up to 36. But we've got some areas that, you know, if I've got a 15-acre tract and I'm building a house in the middle of it, and limiting to 36 inches doesn't make a lot of sense if I could do a drainage impact study and show where I could go, heck, I might be able to go 10 foot and not have any impact on my neighbor. You know what I'm talking about? So basically, the thought process on C was that if you wanted to go above what was allowed, 24 or 36 inches, do a drainage impact study and show that you can go to 5 foot and not impact your neighbor. Now, you and I know that probably some of those lots are gonna have a hard time doing that, but there's gonna come at some point in time, based on the size, that you can actually, if you wanna pile in dirt, do it without impacting your neighbor, which is the whole purpose of the ordinance. And if you didn't wanna build a house on Pier B.
Sounds like your intention of this is for people that have a large property.
Well, ultimately, yeah. The thought process is that you and I both know if I've got a half acre lot, or, you know, just under a half acre, and I put 24 inches of fill on it, if I want to go to 48 inches, it's not going to work. A drainage impact study is not going to let me do that. But what we're saying is that if you have a lot and you want to go over the amount of dirt that we allow you by ordinance, that you've got to do a drainage impact study. So do I need to include 24, or is it understood that 24 would never work, or is there a possibility that 24 could work and we should leave it? I mean, you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think to give the option for both, even though it's probably never gonna happen, you probably should give the option for both.
So C and 1 should say 24 or 36 inches of fill respectively, which gives you the option. It applies to both. Come on up, Mr. Kenton.
I'm gonna have to object to, putting any limits on fill. I'm not against, protecting my neighbors. When I build a house, I wanna be, as a builder, I wanna be a good neighbor. But when you say I've got a half acre lot and I can't put more than 24 inches of fill on it, there again, we don't know what shape my lot is. It may be a perfect square and I may be putting a small house right in the middle of it. And if I go up 3 foot, I still may be able to get my 3-on-1 slope, stay 8 foot away from my property lines, put my swale ditches in, and never put any water on my neighbor's property. Here again, I think you need to stay away from limits on how much fill can be brought in and place the limits on how the pad can be built, the size of the pad, how close it can encroach to the property, borders, the slopes of the pad, etc., so that we do not put water on our neighbor. There again, I don't want to be, you know, if you take one paintbrush and paint every half acre lot and say, we can't put more than 24 inches of fill on any half acre lot, then I would like to see the science and the math behind that. And the same thing with the 36 inches. And as you just said, if we got a 15-acre lot out here, we may need to go 5 foot up and be perfectly able to do it as long as we follow certain guidelines, 3-to-1 slope, stay 8 foot away from the property lines, put a swale ditch to carry the water away without encroaching on our neighbor. Thank you.
Thank you. Y'all got a lot of information y'all were sharing, so why don't you help us with it a little bit?
Oh, so it doesn't seem to flow right if y'all's intention of this ordinance.
Okay,
What's your question?
It's almost like you have an A and you have a B. Your C is almost like something completely different. Like I feel like C should just be number 8 on here.
Okay, so you think C should just be 8?
It seems like you're just trying to make it an exception to your fill requirement.
Which is really what it is. What we're trying to say is that there are gonna be times when the 36-inch limit doesn't make sense. But at the same time, to protect the people around us, if we're gonna restrict fill, which we seem to have an issue. I mean, I know I've had some of these piles in my in my district that are really causing problems. I think everybody's kind of seen the same thing. So that was a reason for the fill ordinance to begin with, to address that. But in discussion with individuals and whatever, and getting some feedback, we felt that there were instances where more than 36 was acceptable, but we needed to be able to document that situation occurred, which is how we came up with the drainage impact study.
And I think that's fine. I just think this actual section there's something we need to do, because me and him were discussing it. It's almost like you're talking about a subdivision, but I feel like you're really talking about a residential lot that's already existing within an existing subdivision.
Okay, so I think the intent, here's what we're trying not to do. We're not trying to say residential lot, because then we're saying that this ordinance only applies to a specific group. So we're talking about every lot. But we're saying, so the reason for C, or 8 as you call it, is that if you've had a drainage impact study on your property, then the fill ordinance technically doesn't apply to you. You follow what I'm talking about? If we're saying that lots smaller than a half acre have 24 inches of fill, lots greater than a half acre are limited to 36 inches of fill, unless you had a drainage impact study. And you show that the fill you're bringing in doesn't negatively impact your neighbor, which is what we're doing with commercial and subdivisions right now. So we're giving the individual that owns the individual that owns the lot the same opportunity to build higher on their property, as long as they meet the same standard and have a drainage impact study and know that there's no impact on their neighbor. Because the feeling was that if we limited the fill ordinance to residential lots and didn't apply it to all property throughout the parish, then it would be subject to be stricken down in court. So we're trying to make the ordinance apply to everything. That's the reason for allowing a drainage impact study to even let a residential lot exceed the limits of fill that are being placed on it by the ordinance.
I had I've been looking for the ordinance, and I don't know if you had it typed up before, but I just got a copy of it.
I sent it to Sandy about 2:30 today, to be quite honest with you.
I hadn't checked my emails since, since 3 o'clock today.
Sandy just finished it up about 5 o'clock
But I guess
today.
what I'm saying is I just got this, and I've been looking for this, and I saw the one you brought from Ascension at the last meeting, and I mean, it just left me kind of confused as to what direction. This is the first hard thing I've seen. And I agree with Morgan that it just doesn't seem to flow correctly. I think we can work something out, like Mr. Kinchin said, where instead of number 1, where you just say a hard limit of 24 and a hard limit of 36, then you stifle the engineering and the design of the developers to say, look, we can build up and we could fix the problem without causing flooding. If we could just maybe postpone this till the next ordinance committee, and then from this ordinance draft that you've got, we could probably put together something that's really good, and it'll flow better, like Morgan said. And we're not in a hurry, I don't think we are, but I wouldn't mind supporting this if we could at least maybe send it back to the next ordinance committee, give the engineers and the developers time to look at finally an ordinance to see how it would affect everyone. If y'all be okay with that, I'd like to just maybe postpone this to the next ordinance committee.
So you got a motion to postpone it, defer it?
I second it.
Got a second? Any objection? Move.
We got a.
I could keep on commenting, I'd like to comment.
Come on and comment. We'll listen to more comments, but I know when I don't have enough votes to send something forward, so I'm willing to move on.
I like you. Look, I really.
I got one question too. Whenever he.
But if before you say something, I want to make a comment. Mr. Talbot, you did a absolutely fantastic job of talking about how the pads, the slopes, these are important things that need to be done, and I want to commend you on that. Thank you very much for protecting this parish. I mean that, sincerely. I just want to be careful not to stifle ingenuity and development from people that can want to protect their properties and build up higher and think of alternative ways to keep from flooding their neighbors. So, okay, that's what I was trying to say.
My understanding was I can haul in 36 inches and I don't have to have a drainage study. If I have to have a drainage study, then to haul in more dirt, then I'd have to submit a drainage study, correct?
Right.
Okay, my question to you is, on this first one, it says, certificate of elevation shall be submitted for any structure to be built or placed on a lot. Say I want to build me a little 8 by 12 storage shed on piers back there and it's on base ground. I'm gonna have to pay an engineer to come in here and tell me my elevation is this many feet?
You gotta have a elevation certificate when you build anything.
That don't sound right. Sounds like I'm making the rich man over here richer.
You must be pointing to the wrong one.
Whichever one of you people, the engineers, are gonna shoot the grade and all, but I didn't think that was a part of the situation.
If you go to build a structure, Morgan, am I correct? You gotta have an elevation certificate to build a structure in Livingston Parish.
If it's in a flood zone.
Right.
Well, if it's not in flood zone.
Then you don't need to pile 3 foot of dirt up.
So let me ask you
No,
a
I
question.
mean, what I'm saying is, I don't want to have to pay an engineer to come tell me my property that's not in flood zone, that I'm not hauling dirt in on, that I want to build a portable, a small storage shed out back to put my hose and whatever in there. I don't want to have to pay for an engineer to come out here and tell me it's at this elevation.
Well, and you know something? I wish you didn't either. And if we had good floodplain management where we could identify at the permit office what flood area you were in, and we had a floodplain manager with field mitigation, then it wouldn't be required unless you were in certain areas. But we don't have that at this point in time. And so consequently, you know,
I'm gonna have to pay for it because
ordinances kind of had to be written.
written.
Ordinance kind of had to be written to be generic. I understand your position. I understand perfectly, but I don't know a way around that particular part. I'm gonna be. You presented a quandary, and I'm gonna give you a realistic answer. I'm not trying to, There are probably ways that we could fix it, but it would require something that we're not in a position to do at this point
I
in
have a
time.
question. Morgan, maybe you could answer this, or Thomas as well. If you want to pour a slab, a patio, concrete patio, you don't have to have a certificate, a permit for that, a certificate for the permit or certificate, correct?
You gotta have a building permit, I'm assuming, yeah.
I was told this week that you didn't need, the parish don't require a permit to pour a patio.
I don't know that.
I would trust what you heard from the parish.
Yeah.
Okay, you know what? That's another reason I like to just put this on, so we can research this a little bit more.
Well, the only thing I wanted to ask was. Yeah, that's right. Are you talking about a permit or?
I'm sorry?
With FEMA
Jeff?
regulations.
I was trying to hear what Bubba had to say.
How does it go along with FEMA?
Yeah.
Basically, it kind of corresponds to it. FEMA's gonna want you to build whatever you build above the base flood, whether it be a foot above base flood or whatever the deal is. And so basically what we're gonna ask you when you come to get a permit is that you give us the proposed elevation of your slab. Give us your base flood elevation. So if you're building an area that's like base flood plus a foot or base flood plus, then you would have a proposed elevation of your slab, your base flood, and then you would give us a shot of your property so that we could, of the lowest part of your property, so we could calculate, if you need 5 foot to get to your proposed slab from your property, then we need to know that, you might be able to use 2 foot of fill or 3 foot of fill. How are you gonna compensate for the other 2 feet? That's the purpose of the original application process, is so that the person writing the permit based on this deal would know how your slab corresponded to your property with respect to the amount of fill and how you planned on achieving it. If you could build it all, you could do it all 5 foot with a chain wall if you wanted to. You could do it with piers, But that was the purpose of that information on the front end, was to make that calculation.
And I don't know, but from reading and listening to news, it looks like, the price of flood insurance is going to continue to grow.
Oh, absolutely.
And
It's
if you
getting-
don't have it to a certain point, you won't even be able to get flood insurance.
Well, Ascension's got a problem right now that they've got houses built that are getting moved from AE into a floodway, which is basically gonna make I think how much more expensive is it to buy? It's substantially more expensive to buy in a floodway, and so that's what the issues are.
Yeah.
That's why floodplain management, if you had it, when FEMA came to you with a new set of maps, you could absolutely fight them over, justifying why their numbers are not correct.
Right.
But if you don't have good floodplain management, then you're kind of stuck with the numbers they give you. And that's kind of, we've got situations in this parish right now, I think over by, Eden Church and Lockhart, we've got areas that are in an AE zone that never flood. But the map says they're AE, so those people have flood insurance. And there are other areas that are in an X that might have got 3 or 4 foot of water in 2016, but they're in an X zone because of the way the map is. And we don't have the ability to challenge those maps. Am I fairly accurate in saying that, Morgan?
We tried for 2 years on these last maps to tell them that they were wrong. And they basically told the parish president at that time that either you accept them or you just don't get coverage.
So, and that's because we don't have.
Well, it's because of the original flood maps that were done back in the 1980s and all that. We were based on different areas and different elevations. Well, they came in and gave us the state plain elevations, which are good elevations, but they didn't adjust all of the old data to match that, which put a huge gap between the old data and the new data. And it's just, we have to live with that.
So, Bo, that's kind of why. I mean,
Yeah.
we know we've got some things that got to be fixed, but you can't fix everything at one time. I mean, you know from your experience on the police jury before, some of this stuff takes time. So that's kind of where we're at. So we had a motion and a second to basically just defer this issue for another 2 weeks. We'll bring it back before the committee again, and in the meantime, we'll spend some time talking to some more engineers and talking to Morgan again and see if we can hash some more of this stuff out so that we're more amenable to everybody. And there was no objection to deferring it. 4, review, discussion, and recommendation of ordinance, new business. We've got, everybody have 4A in your packet? 4A basically says, currently right now on a quick claim, if you come to the parish to do a quick claim, you pay a $250 fee to the planning department. And that basically covers the cost of the work. I talked to Natalie and I talked to Mr. DiGirolamo and asked them to review their $250 charge with respect to the work that they have involved in a quick claim. And Sam sent me an email back saying that they felt that $250 justified the work that they did. So basically, you pay a $250 fee, we go through all the quick claim process, then the council ends up spending, on average, another $250 to file the paperwork. So basically, quick claims are costing the council $250 every time a quick claim is done. So basically, this ordinance that we're asking to introduce tonight changes 2 things. I think it basically changes the filing fee from $250 to $500, which basically covers costs. And then it asks that the submissions be in a PDF form. Because what happens if you bring a paper map and then it gets scanned in, then it gets emailed around, the resolution is not great. If it comes in a PDF and then gets mailed around, everything is still sharp and easily legible. Is that about, that's what, she's gone.
I think that's fair. I think that's fair also. We do what, maybe 1 or 2 of these, it seems like, just off of
We
memory.
do a lot of them.
We do a lot of servitude revocations.
So this actually recommendation came, it actually came from the council clerk. Is she's the one that, you know, really just addressed the fact that our budget, we were getting chewed up every time a quick claim was done, that it was costing us in the neighborhood. And they vary somewhat depending on the number of pages that might be associated with it, but she did a basic average. Didn't you do the average around 250, Sandy? Is that what you figured out? So she did the research. I verified with the planning office that I just wanted to be sure that the original 250 cost wasn't for the filing fees. And Sam assured us that based on the time they spend to acquire all the letters of no objection from all the different utilities, that the $250 fee for them was more than adequate to cover the cost. So does anybody have any objection to this? So I get a motion to give a favorable recommendation for introduction tonight? Go ahead, Ms. Cindy.
We have a really hard time whenever planning doesn't receive the survey map with the hatch marks.
The PDF,
Okay.
we talked about that. Yeah, we explained that if it comes in a PDF and it starts getting emailed around, then the clarity stays the same. Where if it's brought in paper, scanned in, and whatever, it's not. So we addressed the PDF format thing, and then we addressed the change in the filing fee from 250 to 500. Any comment from the audience on this particular item? None. Do I have a motion for favorable recommendation?
I make that motion for a favorable
Recommendation
recommendation.
by Mr. and a second by Mr. Harris. We got any objection? None. So we're going to move forward with that. 4B, discussion of current noise ordinance. I did not realize this, but Mr. Bowman had called Mr. Everett, and there was a time lapse. So he basically is not prepared to have his discussion tonight, so we're just gonna move this on to the next next ordinance committee meeting. So basically 3A, 3B, and 4B will be at least on the next ordinance committee meeting. No other business that we need to discuss. You have a motion for adjournment?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Mack, have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr.
John Watson.
Yeah, Mr. Watson.
The John Watson.
I wanted to say something about the Indian motorcycle, but I didn't know what his name. No objection, so ordered. Thank you.